Sorry. I was late. There's a nice shindig down there that I was at. It was pretty fun.
Who are you?
Well, I'm the typical second banana. I'm here to aid the hero in his quest for justice throughout the West and to provide levity in otherwise serious situations.
That's great, but this isn't really Western. It's more like a documentary, so I don't really need a sidekick.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I guess I'll be back at that shindig if you need me.
Welcome anyway, folks.
The very first Western is often considered The Great Train Robbery. It is a short film by today's standards and was produced in 1903 by the Edison Film Company. It doesn't resemble anything that people see at the movie theaters today. The real significance here is that it proved that a genre that had actually been around for a long time was going to make the next transition in entertainment. The American West had been glorified for years in books, magazines, and newspapers. The advent of film merely gave this storytelling style a new venue. At this point, it's worth mentioning some source material. I have watched many westerns and based many of the facts and ideas on my first-hand experience, but I also had the good sense to read up on the subject and would like to recommend 3 books. The Western, From Silence to Cinerama, by George N. Fenton and William K. Everson, has a great narrative on the early westerns that are hard to view these days, and covers the evolution well up until the book's publishing in 1962. The Film-Goer's Guide to the Great Westerns, Stagecoach to Tombstone, has some great summations and backgrounds on many classic westerns. Finally, True West, an illustrated guide to the heyday of the Western by Michael Barson, is a quick read with lots of great information on some of the best the genre has to offer. Now, through these sources, it can be said that the early Westerns were dominated by 2 men. William S. Hart and Tom Mix were men with real cowboy experience that went to Hollywood to make movies about the world they were from. Hart produced silent films that reflected realism. His films were gritty movies with plots about bad guys going straight, corrupt villains, and real Native Americans. Hart was considered the realist, but Tom Mix was truly the showman. He was a former rodeo champ who highlighted his movies with costumes no real cowboy would wear and fancy horse riding tricks. Mix shied away from the strong stories that Hart relied on to a style based more on entertainment. Both these men were copied frequently over the years, but Mix's showman style would probably be considered the more popular of the two over the decades following his initial success.
The style that most people associate with these early films is the B-Western. These films were done with stock stars, stock plots, and weren't very interesting, but they automatically had an association with the audience since people already knew the star. There was sort of a cast of stereotypes used in a lot of these early Westerns. One in particular was the hero.
Here to save the day.
Pretty enthusiastic, aren't you?
Stand for truth, justice, and just plain old wholesomeness.
He's pretty annoying, folks.
What did you say?
Nothing.
Okay, not all these heroes were this completely hokey, but it didn't stray too much, as the target of these films were considered to be a younger audience, boys mostly. Some of the men who did these roles, either regularly or in serials, were Ken Maynard, Harry Carey, Lash LaRue, and John Wayne, who we'll talk about more later. Very few of these films are considered classic, except as part of a larger whole. There were some big epics made in the pre-1939 period, like Cimarron, The Iron Horse, and The Big Trail. However, the sheer number of the B style vastly overshadowed these films.
Of course, these films had to have their stock cast of characters to complete the simple films. Of course, every hero needed a villain.
I wonder where that do-gooder is. I bet he's trying to ruin my plans to take over the town with my general corrupt methods so I can have the mining rights, and then I can get a Senate seat, then I'll run for president, then I'll rule the world.
Sound like some fairly unrealistic goals.
Why, you must die!
Oh, wow. Ooh, that hurt? Should probably put some ice on that and pressure for that thing. Yeesh. But anyway, moving on. Other than the villain, there was also the damsel in distress.
Oh dear, that evil fellow is trying to steal the deed to our house and our ranch and our mine and, well, everything.
This is the kind of thing that William S. Hart usually complained about. This is probably the worst of the stereotypes. The character really didn't add much. I mean, how would somebody survive in the Wild West? This sort of weakness, you know, not really doing anything with an elderly father. I mean, it just doesn't seem realistic.
Who are you calling a wimp?
Oh!
Boo! Boo! That's it. Boo!
One other character to mention now.
I'm back.
Oh, great.
We gotta go, Mr. Narrator.
Go where?
There's gold in them nar hills.
What hills? What are you talking
Them
about?
nar!
The sidekick was a character typically brought in for humor and to help out the hero in bad situations.
Yeah, anyway, I'm off to pan for gold.
How are you gonna with the... Never mind. Anyway, moving on. Native Americans were given a pretty fair shake in some of the early westerns of William S. Hart and others. But as time went on, they sort of fell into sort of a stereotypical role of savage, stupid people. Like the Indians shown in Wild West shows by Buffalo Bill and others. It wasn't a fair stereotype, but it's what they get in a lot of the B westerns.
How, white man?
How? How what?
Sir Big Chief, we smoking peace pipes. We go off to happy hunting grounds. Time goes slow.
Wait, don't I know you from somewhere?
Hey, don't ruin this for me, buddy. Actors find work where they can find it. Many white men played Indians in the movies.
Fair enough.
There's one more thing that is worth mentioning from this period. The singing cowboy may seem silly by today's standards, but the idea of someone breaking out into a song during the chase may have been a little more acceptable back then. Gene Autry really started the trend with success on the big screen. Autry really created a brand with the same stock stories of the B-Western and an above-average singing ability that intrigued audiences. Roy Rogers, with his horse Trigger, also cashed in on the phenomenon. He later continued his success with his famous wife Dale Evans. Tex Ritter, now more known for being John Ritter's father, also made a living as a singing cowboy for many years. There were many others in this subgenre, but these were probably the most popular of the group.
And now, a song. Don't stop the sacrifice! Don't get in my way! Whoa! What are you doing?
Singing.
You're not supposed to sing like that. You're supposed to sing like Rogers and Autry, sweetly. Home, home on the range.
I like this better.
Please stay tuned for part 2, folks.
And more singing.
No!